Hello, and welcome to the Aurora Podcast, where we discuss topics that exist outside of traditional school curriculum that are used to help educate students and prepare them for life outside of high school. I'm joined with Owen. My name is Ben Lan, and
I'd like to recognize that we are gathered here at the Whatcom Museum, where they seek to stimulate curiosity about our cultural and historic landscape from minds young and old.
and this is kind of the podcast for students by students. And today we will be interviewing Samantha, who is a software engineer at Apple. So, Samantha, would you mind just introducing yourself a little bit more and maybe how you got into software engineering?
Sure. Hi, I'm Samantha. I'm 25. Been working at Apple for the past couple years after I graduated from my master's degree. I was surprised to find myself in software engineering. When I first went to college, I had never heard of computer science, never coded a day in my life, didn't anticipate that this is what I'd be doing or that I'd be working in virtual reality. So really just, I guess, going to college and taking some random classes and experimenting around, found what I found pretty interesting and compelling, courses that I was excited to do the homework for, and I just kind of kept going from there. So that's why I now work in software engineering.
Sweet. What
Yeah.
year did you kind of decide that software engineering was right for you?
Well, I guess my freshman year at Stanford, I took the my first quarter. I took the very intro computer science class, and I thought it was a lot of fun. So the next quarter, I took the next class, and I just kind of kept taking classes. I did an industrial engineering major for my undergrad degree, so at first I was just considering like, this is cool. I'll do it on the side. Maybe I'll get a minor. As I kept taking classes, I ultimately decided like, actually, I kind of want to like do this as my full time thing, not on the side. So that's how I decided to get my master's afterwards. But my freshman winter, I actually took this class called Virtual People, which was in the comms department by Jeremy Bailenson, who has the Virtual Human Interaction Lab at Stanford. And that was my first foray into anything virtual reality. So, like, first quarter, I tried computer science, which I'd never heard of. Second quarter, I tried virtual reality, which I had never heard of. I only took this class because someone from my high school had gotten into Stanford a few years prior, and so, when before you go to college, you're like, do you have any advice for me or any cool classes I should take? And they said that this class was cool. And so it like didn't count for my major, wasn't relevant to anything I like thought I was supposed to be studying. But I decided to take it because this guy said it was cool. And it was very cool. It was my first time ever putting on a virtual reality headset, experiencing like what it felt like to be immersed in a different world, like try different studies, got involved in the lab. So I think the combination of getting to try computer science and then getting to try virtual reality is what ultimately led me to merge the two and code for virtual reality.
Yeah. So, what is your daily job like working as a software engineer?
Yeah, my job, it kind of varies day to day. I write a lot of code. I review a lot of other people's code, but I also really collaborate with a number of other engineers across all layers of the stacks. Like I work kind of building applications. So it's kind of like the top level thing that a user would see and interact with. But of course, to get to that point, we're working with designers and other engineers from frameworks, from lower level systems. And so I'm, in meetings across people in my team and these other teams to figure out what needs to get built to enable experiences that I'm going to be working on making. And then also within our application, how we should, design it and structure it so that it will, make sense long into the future, and that as it grows or scales or as new features are added, that things aren't kind of like hard coded into place, but rather are designed for the future as well.
So, engineering is such a wide range of fields. There's a lot of different ways you can get into engineering. What kind of stuck out to you about being a software engineer that really interested you?
Yeah, when I first started at Stanford, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I liked like science, math, so people told me engineering would be great for me. But then like you, I was like, well, what does that mean? And there's so many different types of engineering, right? So then you're like, okay, I'll take the intro class for a lot of these. I took, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, these computer science classes. And really it was hard to decide at first. There's a lot of interesting applications, and the courses were interesting. I think that for me, computer science, it was just something so different. Like I guess I thought about like circuits or I don't know. It's like computer science isn't that crazy, and most people have heard of it. But for me, it was just this kind of brand new thing to me, and I was just really intrigued to see all the different directions it could go and where it could take me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So as you started moving up through college, started doing more with computer science, what eventually, I guess, led you to graduate? What were some of the more intensive classes that you started taking, focusing on virtual reality?
Yeah, so at Stanford, there honestly weren't too many courses that I could take related to virtual reality. So I mentioned the class I took my freshman winter. That was really all about, the social impacts of virtual reality. Like, how does it impact our brains? How do brains decide what's real or not real, and how can these experiences like impact social phenomenons? And so that was fascinating, and what's made me be like, this is a cool medium. I need to learn more. I need to delve deeper into this. But yeah, there really weren't, at least at that point in time, any classes that I could take of how to code for it, how to create these experiences. So I started working for that lab. I started or worked with the VR club on campus, which at that point in time was just starting out. There was like 5 of us. It's now grown to be a big club. And the following summer, I actually I had worked for like an AR startup that let me work from home. I had had knee surgery, and so in a way, I think that having to have knee surgery and like not take a traditional internship was in is the kind of like the best thing that happened, even though that sounds crazy, because it
Yeah.
offered me this time. And so I spent that summer, in bed taking online classes in Udemy, learning how to code for Unity, how to create 3D assets in Blender, really using that time to create, games, try them out on headsets. And if it weren't for that time and those classes completely independent of school, I don't think I would have had the opportunities to get kind of the future jobs developing in virtual reality that I did. Although who knows, probably I would have ended up in this field because I'm just really into
Yeah.
it. But at least for my path, that was kind of the turning point for how I
Yeah.
got into the technical side of this field.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
super interesting. So, how did you kind of get a job at Apple? Like, what's the application process, or
Yeah.
how's that all
Yeah,
work?
it's complicated. Apple hires for a specific job as opposed to being like, we're hiring software engineers. Now you're hired as an engineer. What team do you go to? So I think it actually helped a lot for me that I was interested in this very specific thing, right? There's only so many, job postings with an AR VR keyword in its title. So I think for me, it helped that I was able to really hone in on focus of both where my skill set aligned with a specific job posting that I was interested in. I think it also helped. I had interned at Apple, although in a completely different org, a couple years prior. So I had worked in developer relations, right, as like ARKit was coming out, and so learning that medium and working there. So I think it helped that I had that experience, and then also I think the virtual reality club that I mentioned that I joined at Stanford and that's grown into a big club. My like freshman year, there's someone in the club who was in grad school who was really a great mentor to me and taught me so much. And he ended up working at Apple in the org that I currently work in. So I think also having that relationship, when you take a job, most people know what they're going to do. For the work that I work in, you take a job and you have an idea of what you think you might be doing, and you don't find out until your first day when you've signed the NDA, what it is that you're actually working on, actually building. So I think having somebody that I trusted to be able to say, like, you're going to like this job, you should say yes. I think that was really helpful too in knowing that this was a place that I wanted to come to.
Yeah. So you've mentioned VR and AR. What is the difference between those two, and I guess similarities as well? And how are they used um, each day in the work?
Yeah, I think like kind of virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, I view it as a spectrum where like virtual reality is you're completely immersed in a virtual world, right? You're not seeing any of what's going around in your, current world. A lot of people, play games like Beat Saber where you're fully immersed. A lot of people think of augmented reality as like you're mostly in your real world and it's just being augmented with some, 3D bits. And so, for the most part, we consider those like phone experiences. So, maybe like the Measure app that I said before, where you're experiencing something that's augmented your world kind of through a portal in that way. Kind of mixed reality somewhat lies in the middle, kind of like the HoloLens from Microsoft, where it's a headset that you're putting on, but it really isn't a virtual world that you're seeing through. You're just still in your normal world, but much more field of view of display of virtual content being added. So I think that there's a lot of things that kind of merge that spectrum. Even you see the new Meta headset that comes out that has video pass through, right? So now you're still immersed in a VR device, but seeing your real world. I think everyone will have their own opinion on kind of where in that spectrum that lies and what you would call that. So I think it's one of those things that's fairly fluid, but it's just kind of the degree of immersion.
So, as you've worked more with the medium of virtual reality and gotten more
Mhm.
close and up personal with it, how have you kind of viewed the values of it and I guess, how is it useful?
Yeah, I think the real benefit of virtual reality and these technologies is that they don't have to perfectly mimic the real world and real world limitations that we have. So they're great for things, doing things that would be dangerous to do in the real world or impossible, rare, so expensive that you couldn't possibly do it, mimic space travel or do safety trainings for what would happen in rare situations. And so there's all kinds of experiences in that way, but I really view this medium as what is it going to unlock and allow a regular person to do that they otherwise can't in their normal life, in their normal world.
Yep. Um, Kind of going with that. What do you enjoy doing in virtual reality if you're just using it as I guess a consumer? What is your favorite use of it?
Yeah, right now, I guess my favorite use is kind of like the gaming aspect, or yeah, as we were all, distributed remote during the pandemic, being able to put on a headset and then hop into a game with friends and kind of like feel that presence with them. So I think that ability to kind of co-locate people and, experience joy with other people, do things like these kinds of games that are things that you can't do in the real world. So it's not even, I mean, it's cool when people meet up and they play chess in VR. Have nothing against that. But I like playing the games where it's like, even if you and I were in the same room, like we would have to put on this headset to get an experience like this because like we can't play around in zero gravity in our normal living room. And so I have fun playing games like that.
So, as you diving into the more technical side of it, as when you're coding and building virtual worlds, what do you think about um, when kind of facing the uncanny valley and making it feel real and playable to the user?
Yeah, the uncanny valley is really this place where things get really close to being real, but not quite real enough that it just makes us feel like super weirded out and uncomfortable. And so I think that anytime you're building something, if you just get a lot of people to see it or play it or test it, you get enough opinions and if you've hit something good or something bad. And I think that a lot of times, people think of the uncanny valley, especially with like digital representations. So I think that that's the kind of the biggest place to look at if you're concerned about something like that.
Hmm. So, for a lot of our viewers watching this,
Mhm.
none of them are going to know much about virtual reality. So, if any of them might be interested in going into the virtual reality or software engineering kind of phase, what would you encourage them, or would you encourage them to enter this field?
I would totally encourage anybody to enter this field. I love my job, love what I do. And like every day I'm like, I get paid to do this. This is incredible. And I would say is that there's just like so many resources out there from like, yeah, these online classes that you can take to even just like if you're someone who uses like Snapchat or Instagram, they have all those like lens studios where you can like download that onto your computer, like make yourself a Snapchat lens and send that around with your friends. I'd say that the bar is pretty low of what just somebody making a pet project in their house can do. Like there's so many opportunities, so many free resources online. And so I would say like you don't have to build like the most incredible what becomes the newest most popular game. Like you can just try tinkering with tools and make things, try things out, see how what you like, what you don't like, if you are more interested in, yeah, creating what a user sees or creating the tools that a developer would need to be able to go and make that. So I think that there's just so many different types of roles in this field, and anything that you can do that helps you figure out and narrow down your path is like really worth doing.
Yeah. If you were just wanting to start out, you mentioned
Hmm.
using Blender.
Hmm.
Is there any other good free or I guess maybe cheap beginner websites that you would recommend?
So I guess Udemy was the website that I took some online classes. They like go on sale. It was not expensive when I did it. But really just getting started in Unity would probably be the best place. And there's like so many tutorials even just on YouTube. And there's so many, and now with like the rise of influencers, like even just the number of people that I follow on Instagram that are just like how I built this or made this avatar or like look at this cool project that I did. I think beyond even making things yourself, seeing what other people are making, what is possible with these tools, maybe getting inspired to be like, what if I can make something that is somewhat similar to this? Or like, can I create something with this tool? I think that having something as an inspiration is really helpful when trying to figure out like what skills do I need to learn to be able to accomplish this, and where do I get started?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. So I guess my next question would kind of be, did you have, when you got your software engineer major,
Mhm.
I guess, did virtual reality first stick out and then you were like, hey, maybe I should do software engineering because that'll help me get a job in virtual reality, or was it kind of the other way around?
Yeah, I guess it was all kind of a merge because I first got interested in software engineering before I got really interested in virtual reality. Then I got interested in virtual reality and said, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool to code for this?" Took even more, computer science classes. And then at this point, it's kind of like late to change your major, and I liked my major. So I was like, let me get another degree because yes, there's more I want to learn. There's like more skill, more time for these projects that I'm talking about, even just on the side in college, different jobs I was working on or like personal projects. I think kind of giving yourself that gift of time a little bit too to explore, to experiment, to hone these skills before you go into industry is a really great use of time. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. For a lot of the students, and for me personally as
Hmm.
well, choosing a major or looking at different majors is a very daunting task.
Yeah.
So, I guess what would be kind of your advice for high school students looking at maybe going into different majors?
Yeah, I remember it being so stressful. I remember getting to school and being like, how am I supposed to know what to do? Or even you take the intro courses for a lot of things and you're like, I don't know, they all seem fine. They all seem cool. So I think I would say try to not stress too much about it. I would say try to pick something that you think you're interested or that you think you'll be good at. And that just try to stay open minded about different experiences and opportunities that come your way. Like I definitely didn't go into my major thinking I would end up in virtual reality. But when I had these different experiences, got to try it out and said, hey, this is cool. This is something that excites me. I want to do this. I, had to figure out how to carve a path or pick a different degree that might best suit that. And so I would say, yeah, my best recommendation is just to try to be like open minded to wherever your path takes you, and that most people don't know what they want to do for the rest of their lives when they're 18, and that you don't have to stand by the exact decision of the major that you picked your first quarter or semester at college. And even if you end up getting that degree, you can still change your mind and do so many different things after the fact. um,
Yeah. Um, so you said that your job currently is a very small field. There's not many people working in, and there's not many college courses that directly lead to it. Um, so what was your story getting into multiple different software engineering and computer engineering courses, and then finally ending up at VR, and how did you kind of get there and then get into the job of building VR worlds?
yeah, I think like Stanford was great because it exposed me to VR and it gave me a lot of like software engineering hard skills that you need to get a job. But I guess not everybody's going to go to Stanford. And that's the exciting thing about this story, is that so much of what I learned, I didn't learn in like specific courses that are only taught at Stanford. And you better go there if you want this career. I think a lot of what I did was just learning on my own, finding things that I was interested in and trying to learn how to make them, find these different resources, or find, interesting jobs that I could work part-time during school or in the summers. I mentioned I was really interested in medical VR. And so I worked with the Lucille Packard's Children's Hospital, making a VR diaphragmatic breathing application for their patients. I worked at the Stanford School of Medicine in the incubator for medical mixed and extended reality on like how you could track a tooltip with a HoloLens so that you could be able to have a better field of view during a surgery if you can, superimpose patient anatomy on top of, the real world. And so I think that really just trying to find these opportunities, find what I need to learn to get an opportunity like that, and really just kind of carve a path for myself was the best path forward. And I think that the promising thing is that, I mean, there were a number of people working in this field when I got into it. It just wasn't like a super well carved route that you can go through college and get to. But I think that the gain in popularity of these technologies, is getting more and more present across courses and universities. Even Stanford has a few more classes, and there's so many more online resources that I think that really anybody who's interested can kind of just like try to find their way. If you're passionate enough, if you're trying to find those resources, make those connections, there's definitely like a place for you in this industry.
Yeah.
Did you always kind of envision working for Apple, or was that kind of an opportunity that just kind of presented itself?
I guess I'd say every step along the way, I didn't have this like grand plan of like, here is my end goal. In 5 years, I will work for Apple, and this is my exact step along the way. Every time it was just like finding the next opportunity that I could get, that I was interested in, that would further develop my skills. I think that I was really interested in working for a large company so I could collaborate with a number of other people and more senior engineers where I could like learn a lot of industry knowledge from. My prior jobs, I was more of an independent contractor, so it was more or less just me to like make this whole application for the hospital. And so that was a great experience to do the need finding and the prototyping and the design and make the whole thing end to end, which was like a great wealth of skills that I learned and developed doing that. But then for my next thing, I said, I don't want to be the only engineer doing this. I want to I want to learn from people who've come before me. And so that's really why I was eager to join Apple.
Yeah.
So would you say you've enjoyed working for kind of a bigger company because of all the connections you can make over maybe working as an independent contractor?
I would say it's not so much like connections of to find the next job or do the next thing, but rather just the wealth of knowledge in this place, of how many people I interact with on a daily basis that I can learn from, who have something interesting that they know, or this resource that they're working on. And so to just be in a place where there's so many minds who are all interested and passionate about this thing, it just really makes you excited every day about what you're working on and who you're working with.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned being an independent contractor. What did you do prior to Apple?
Yeah, so I guess Apple was my first like full-time adult grown-up job. So
Yeah.
before that, it was all kind of like summer internships or
Hmm.
projects like that. So the summer prior to Apple is when I worked at the School of Medicine, on the HoloLens tool tracking project. Then the previous year, I worked at the Chariot program, which was at the Lucille Packard Children's Hospital, making this VR experience for them. The summer before that was when I interned at Apple working with ARKit. And then the summer before that was when I, had my summer at home where I learned how to code for VR, how to make 3D objects, and then I developed a number of 3D objects for an AR startup at the time. So that was kind of, I guess, going backwards, my path of how I wound up at Apple.
Yeah.
I think it's super interesting all the different internships that you've done, and I've heard lots of
Hmm.
people who do internships or apprenticeships. So I guess maybe let's say if I'm interested in something, how would I go about looking for some place I could intern or apprentice for?
Yeah, I think that the best benefit of a job like this is you have a very specific keyword. If you're interested in AR and VR, typing that into the Google search field with, as many companies as you can find, or just like AR VR internship or job, you'll get a lot of specific things that can come up. And so I think just starting there and then researching, what is that startup? What do they do? Or what is this program? Or if you're out of college, is there a professor with a lab that's doing something virtual reality related that you can get involved with and volunteer your time with? I think that that is like the biggest, not the biggest benefit, but like a great perk of this is that it has a very specific word that you can Google, that you can find opportunities with. And I guess that's for anybody in any career. I'm sure that probably most people would say that there is more or less a specific keyword for whatever they do. And so I think maybe figuring out what that is for whatever field that you're interested in getting into so that you can have really productive Google searches, that would be a great place to start.
Yeah. So if you're just getting started, you said you recommend internships, just research, just learning whatever you can. Is there anything else that you would say has helped you besides that?
Yeah, one thing I would recommend is kind of building out a portfolio. So I had this one class, it was like a VR art related class at Stanford. It was super cool. But one of the things that we had to do was with every assignment that we turned in, we had to create like a 1 to 2 minute YouTube video showing it off, explaining it, and really having that was great for being able to apply for jobs or internships. And then I ended up going back and doing it for a bunch of my other work, even outside of the class, because I could really see the value, especially for something like virtual reality. Like most people don't have a headset or they can't download your specific thing from GitHub and try it out themselves, or, things become outdated. They break pretty fast, especially with like personal project type things. So I think finding a way to kind of like document, record, video what you do so that as you apply to something, you can say like, this is what I built, or like, here is what I worked on. And then people can say like, oh, we need someone who can do that, or like, that was a super creative idea, like we could use someone with a creative mind like that. And so I think it's really helpful in both like building your confidence and being able to see that grow over time, like, wow, I've done a lot of things, I've made a lot of cool projects. And then also helpful if you like have a website or have it on your LinkedIn, that as people are searching for you, they get a lot more context into what it is that you've worked on and what you do.
Yeah.
So with the portfolio, is that something that you have like put on your LinkedIn, or is that how does like building a portfolio work? I'm not super
Yeah,
in the
I
know
mean,
for
I think
that.
to everybody it can be like slightly different, or how like hardcore it is. For me, it just really just involved like creating these nice. I used iMovie, uploaded them to YouTube, right? Not like super intense video editing skills, but it was kind of fun to clip them together, make it creative, do the voiceover, explain it,
Hmm.
pick the right clips from the projects I was working on. So I guess I made like a YouTube channel, but I wasn't trying to be this like big influencer person, although it seems like in today's day and age that could be a good idea.
Yeah.
But when I was searching for a job, I created like a website, a free one with like Wix, and I put my resume on it and I embedded the videos
Hmm.
into it so that I could link out to that on my resume, so that I could, add that link when they say, do you have any resources you want us to look at when you are
Hmm.
filling
Yeah.
out the application. So I think that was kind of helpful, or at least I felt like it was helpful. Who knows if it made a difference or not, but that was a step in the process that I would do again.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So is a portfolio something you want to start when you're in high school, or is that more something you did when you were in college?
Oh, this started when I was in like grad school. So I guess this
Oh,
is the
okay.
thing. I feel like for everybody, it's great that people as young as in high school know about all these fields, maybe are getting
Hmm.
started with projects and learning. I think that's fantastic. But I also don't want people to feel like stressed, like they're behind. Like, I don't feel
Yeah.
like anybody's behind. If anything, you're ahead, that you're even thinking about like a career or different
Hmm.
things that you could learn about and work on. So I think it's really just at any point. It also doesn't have to be something that gets published. It could just be for you as you learn and create different projects, of kind of a way to document the things that you did, what you learned along the way, and where it's kind of gotten you to go next.
Yeah. What was the most fun project that you worked on that was just, like you said, just for you, just like, oh, this is cool, I saw this person do this and I want to try it. What was the most fun, interesting one you learned the most from, even?
Yeah, I've learned a lot in a lot. Maybe I'll talk about two. The very first kind of like pet project that I made was this like VR escape room, and it was like this forensics themed room. And so in middle school, I had competed in Science Olympiad, if you've ever heard of that. And so one of my events was like Crime Busters, and so it's this like science competition across middle schools, and you take these tests. And so from doing this event, I learned about chromatography and fingerprinting and like how you decide who did it at a crime. And so I was like, I'm going to turn this into VR. And so I kind of made an escape room themed around these topics that I had learned from my Science Olympiad event. And so that was my first time ever. Like, I made all of the objects. I physically like built the room. I created all the logic between if you hit the microscope, like what shows up and what's the quiz and how do you escape and what's the state management of what scenes you go to. So it's definitely like not my most impressive work, but it was the first thing that I did where it was just like, what do I know about? What am I interested in? What can I make? So that was definitely kind of my first entry point. And then something that I learned a lot in was, I think for this diaphragmatic breathing app, it was like you controlled a volleyball with your breath. So depending on the force of your exhale was like the velocity that was given to a ball, your head position was the direction that it traveled in. And so getting, children to be able to inhale and exhale at a specific rate, to be able to direct that breath to a particular location and have these targets and kind of gamify it. That was like really exciting because I'd never worked with, kind of using the microphone or these different technologies that can be embedded into a headset to kind of control the game in that way.
So if someone might not be interested in VR or AR or working for Apple, but still is interested in software engineering, what would kind of be your, I guess, message to them?
Yeah, there's all kinds of software engineering. So I'd say if you are interested in maybe doing something like building apps, downloading Xcode and looking at the templates projects, watching some dev videos, there's all kinds of resources to get started with really probably with the technology that everybody already has at home. And if that isn't the type of software engineering that interests you, I'd say like, yeah, watch YouTube videos, find out about more career paths. Like there's so many things beyond just making an app or making a virtual reality experience that goes into software engineering, and being able to figure out that, kind of exact niche that you're interested in is really an important step.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Something we like to do is just like our takeaways. So I know I learned a lot about virtual reality. I had no idea any of this. And I appreciated the advice about, building a portfolio and looking at maybe some internships. So that's kind of my takeaways.
Yeah, I also thought it was really interesting that you said don't stress it. We're both working on colleges and like where we want to go, what we want to do, and I think the advice of just kind of relax into it, and your story of having one pathway and then stumbling onto VR is almost reassuring because it just kind of shows you there's so many different options, and
yeah, you never know what'll pique your interest.
Yeah, I think as long as you're like eager and always seeing what's next or where it's going to take you, you'll be fine. Yeah. So I think that's a great takeaway to have.
Perfect. Well, thank you again so much for joining us, and we'll see you all next time.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Of course.